Laugh 25. Stressful sorcery. Sabrina talks to the audience to tell us about how her magic caused her stress. Okay, this doesn't ruin the story, but it could have easily been framed as her telling this to Hilda instead of breaking the fourth wall all of a sudden. Last week she was doing geometry homework when she asked the spirits to give her a ruler and they summoned a random ruler. That wouldn't happen. She just imagined a ruler. They'd give her one regardless because how would they know which king to pick? I wish I knew what Charles IX was like, but instead I don't get that reference. They don't do anything with it. Later, when she was too tired to finish her English composition, she asked her magic pencil to write it for her. She got an F because the pencil was dull. I hate that they reused this joke from an off panel. At least this is realistic of a mistake, but if the pencil had the sentience to talk to her, it would have warned her that it was dull, so never mind. They had no excuse for doing a mean joke if they already did it. Then when she was at the supermarket, hard-pressed for time, she used magic to move really fast with a grocery cart, but crashed into cans. That's realistic at least. She wants to ride a carpet instead of a broom because she's right, it would be really stressful to ride a broom through the sky. Because how are you supposed to sit on something so narrow without toppling over? I guess there's a spell on it to keep you there, creating an invisible surface around the broom, so it's wider than it looks. Sabrina wonders what her nosy neighbor is doing with her broom. Yeah, I can only assume she was trying to steal it like some other character did to Hilda. Otherwise, it's force that she was made to fly into the carpet. There's no reason Sabrina wouldn't be able to cast a spell because she's falling. She grabs a branch to break her fall. At least she wipes the memory of the broom flying from her mind. And while I expected the branch to break on her to add insult to injury, instead the next panel has her stand on the ground just fine. She taps up a giant ice cream soda. And ends the story by saying that she'll have to worry about the stomach ache she'll have when she'll finish it later. At least it doesn't end with her having a stomach ache. This story sucked. Most of the time that her magic inconvenienced her, it was forced to happen by the writing instead of making sense. Usually the comic gives her magic realistic consequences, so there's no excuse for getting it wrong here. And it's annoying that the framing device has her telling the audience about these various events, and other ends. Laugh 26. There's a bunch of stories I didn't find on the site for this comic that I've had since I was young. In this story, Sabrina complains that was one stormy broom ride, and Hilda says she's sick of uncomfortable broom rides, and says, "Who says witches always have to ride on brooms?" She did. You'd think witches would have a magic air bubble generated around them so that it doesn't matter what weather they're flying in, they'll still be comfortable. If stormy weather could get her realistically tired of broom flying, what took her so many centuries? She decides that from now on, they'll fly in a car. Hilda says she somehow forgot that she doesn't know how to drive. I guess that silly single off panel where she drove a car wasn't canon. She taps up a driver's license, and says that her magic can command the car to drive safely. The fact remains that she won't know the rules of the road. I never expected her to drive on the road. I thought she was going to drive the car in the sky because it was going to be a replacement for broom flying. And part of the whole appeal to broom flying would be that you wouldn't have to avoid other people's cars. You wouldn't be putting others in danger. So the whole reason this entertaining, exciting turn of events is happening is because Hilda's somehow forgotten common sense. Just because she's tired of stormy weather doesn't mean it makes sense for her to want to be stuck on the ground and risk car accidents when traveling. Of course, since Hilda hates rules, when she's told to stop at a red light, she changes the traffic light with magic. I was surprised that there weren't any consequences to that. But if there were, it'd be too dark, because it involves someone crashing. You'd think the red light traffic camera would record this, but a spy witch's Abdellas must have taken care of the evidence. There's real tension here, because you never know when someone might crash. And it's a cartoon, so they could write that, and get away with not having the characters realistically injured. Hilda's told she can't pass a slow driver on the right, so she zaps up an underground tunnel to pass directly underneath them, and says that she's still obeying all the silly traffic laws. There wouldn't be a law against this, to be fair, because they wouldn't have anticipated this. It's scaring Sabrina because they're driving in a car around other cars, but she sees magic use all the time. This isn't dangerous so far. Sabrina says there's no parking space, wherever they went, so Hilda uses magic to turn the car sideways. And they get a ticket, and Hilda gets told to appear in court immediately. It wouldn't be immediately. The judge sees that her license actually told the truth about how old she is when she zapped it up, which she should have known not to do. The judge doubts that she's over 300 years old and asks to smell her breath because he assumes she's a chronic alcoholic. And he hates the smell of her breath because she had dragon scales for lunch. That breath must have been enchanted because he miraculously says that he'll let her go with the condition that she never drive a car on their highways again, even after everything he's aware of. It would have been better to draw her pointing at him to brainwash him into this, so it wouldn't be confusing. What made Hilda think she'd get away with parking the car tilted upwards? It merely looking like that would expose magic. Sabrina assumes that it's back to riding brooms for them. But Hilda, the old-fashioned witch, refuses to give up on the comfort of a car. Which can at least be justified because she'd like the comfy car seat she's sitting on. But it's still roofless. But she could tap up a roof for a storm. I would expect Sabrina to be the one being like this and not Hilda. But Hilda being like that is more interesting. She says that she never promised that she wouldn't ride over highways. So the story ends with her flying the car. And there's no noxious fumes from a broommobile. Why didn't she do that in the first place? I guess she was just so bored with always keeping the status quo after centuries that she wanted to try out driving on the road for fun, despite knowing the drawbacks. I like that Sabrina appreciates what she did. I wasn't expecting that. This story, which was paired with color-coded in my Archie comic, was surprisingly entertaining and exciting. I never expected Hilda to drive a car on the road. I also never expected that they wouldn't be causing anyone to crash. Good thing too, because that'd be dark. While Hilda did use magic a lot, at no point was it ever dangerous to herself or the other drivers. Although if she had changed the traffic light when a car was turning near her, it would have been. I wish she just explained that she's bored of doing nothing but flying on brooms after hundreds of years. Because that's needed to justify why a stereotypical witch who insisted on broom flying earlier is suddenly more willing to drive a car in the sky than Sabrina. A storm doesn't justify it because this is a roofless car, and she could have cast a spell so that there'd be a bubble around her on the broom so that she'd always be in sunny weather. She should have explained that she just wanted to try out driving on the road for fun because she's lived for so long. Because without that explanation, it seems contrived that she even did this at all. But the story was entertaining enough to be worth it. Archie Andrews, where are you? 73. Sabrina says Reggie's father is loaded, and Veronica's father has his own financial institution, and asks if there's anyone in her family with bonds or anything. So Hilda shows her an old picture of her uncle in stocks. You'd think witches would have the stock market by now. Betting me 192. Hilda says her old witch's kindergarten class is celebrating its reunion. Since witches are from another planet, it could be believable that they do some different things like have kindergarten reunions, but it's still confusing. There's only 3 candles on the cake, one for each century. Laugh 27. Sabrina sees some girls at school bragging about their Valentines to each other that they got. And Sabrina somehow reveals that she's never received a Valentine. So apparently in this universe, she's never had a boyfriend. It is unique that the Laugh 87 Sabrina stories never have Harvey in it. I haven't seen him once so far. So these would all be pre-Harvey stories at best. But that just means she's not giving us sweet moments where she gets affection or shows affection. She goes home and her aunts notice she's sad even though she isn't looking at them. They must have seen her face before she sat down to read. Hilda says she confided in her that she's lonely, because teen witches have little time for socializing with all the witch homework they have to do. Hilda's solution isn't to simply give her less homework at a time, even though she doesn't need 90% of it. Instead, she decides to tell her young friends to send her Valentines. Lucky for her, it actually means something to Sabrina when she finds them in the mailbox instead of her not caring and being confused because they're from strangers. All of her 3 Valentines are unsigned, which must have been to make it more unlikely that she'd track down whoever wrote them to her when they're not interested. Then she decides to conjure up an image of the faces of the ones who wrote to her. I guess her magic scanned Hilda's mind to find out what they looked like for her. Or the spirits did. Sadly, she screams at seeing scary aliens, when Hilda could have easily convinced some warlocks from her family or friends of her family to write the letters. and that's what I assumed she did. Hilda tells Zelda that those were the most handsome monsters she knew. Why did she even consider monsters? Ambrose brings Sabrina a valentine saying that whoever picked up today's mail forgot this letter for her. She thanks him and fortunately wants to read it. It's from a secret admirer, and she violates his privacy by asking the spirits to show her his face. But to be fair, if she didn't, she might be waiting forever to find out who it was. She finds out it's the new student in her math class and is happy about it. But she should know that if she reveals that she knows who it's from, he'll be very confused. Lucky for her, she gets away with thanking him for it by saying that she just had a lucky guess. I guess the reason he just accepts it is that he figures that he gave away his crush on her by being too obvious earlier. He says he'd like to get to know her better. Surprisingly, Sabrina's out of character by saying that she thinks it's pointless to get into a relationship, and somehow she says she can't explain why he doesn't have a future, but then turns around and admits that she's from a family of witches, when she should know that's not allowed and would just make him freak out or accuse her of being crazy. She was smart by thinking she had no future with a mortal because she would severely outlive one, and she'd have to either secretly mess with his memory or tell him why she's not aging like he is and ruin the relationship in less than 2 decades. I'm just so used to her being so in love with Harvey that she refuses to think about that. So this is out of character. Let me guess, he's a warlock too. Either that or insanely desperate to be with her and really easygoing. All he does is say that's no big deal that they're witches. Wow, he believed her. He really trusts her. He says they're people just like the rest of us. Which does make sense because he's been with Sabrina enough to learn that. But he just found out the truth. And people aren't rational. He tells her to come in and say hello to his folks. Sabrina wonders if she should dare grasp this chance to meet normal people, as if she hasn't done that already a million times. She's nervous and hopes his folks will approve of her, and go figure the story ends with us seeing that he's got a witch mother. Why didn't he tell Sabrina that right away? It'd suck if this was the last time we ever saw these two, because this could be an interesting story arc idea at least. And at least he has a good design, even if it's completely forgettable. So he needs to get a personality to not get boring. This story, after some perfectly removable part of the plot, is about Sabrina finding out she has a secret admirer from a Valentine and smartly using magic to find out who it is so that she could talk to him right away because she really wants a boyfriend. She gets away with telling him it was just a lucky guess that she knew it was him. And then she's out of character when she suddenly has the forethought to recognize that a witch trying to date a mortal is ultimately pointless. It'd be less confusing if she just explained what I did, that she knows he'd outlive her, or she'd have to tell him the truth to explain her not aging. It's not that he'd eventually figure out because Harvey doesn't and she can erase memories. It would have actually been more of a surprise if he didn't turn out to be a warlock, because this was done. But of course he was. Because that explains why he was easygoing about her secret and immediately believed her. Why did she break the biggest witch rule and tell him her secret right away? At least it's refreshingly lighthearted that she doesn't think she'll get lectured by the Witches' Council for it and depowered. So he's a warlock too, which would let us get to see a bunch of spells to make up for his lack of a personality compared to Harvey. If it weren't for the fact that he'll never show up again for no good reason, I'm calling it now. So it's a waste of a concept. He doesn't even use magic. It's not memorable that he turns out to be a warlock, or that he even exists. It goes from an intriguing story with padding in it where Aunt's love her enough to try to cheer her up, to just another retread of a story I already saw in the 70s comic. Laugh 28. Sabrina sees some teenage girls fighting over the last copy of a magazine and uses magic to create every magazine ever printed about the band they like. Then she's surprised by how many magazines showed up. I guess her magic scanned the planet for reading minds to discover which magazines to summon and their looks, because she didn't have the knowledge for it. She walks away and says she doesn't need magazines to feel close to the band because she's mad about all the magazines that fell on her. She says she can use magic to warp to the health spa where the band's vacationing. It's unique that in this story she snaps her fingers for spells instead. Maybe it's another universe. It's predictable what the formula of the whole story is going to be. Just her suffering over and over so that we won't be too jealous of her. She gets grabbed by a woman because she's in the men's massage room and is brought to the women's massage room. She could have used magic to freeze her in time to make her leave her alone. So there's no excuse for getting an awful massage instead. Why wasn't the woman fired? This cliche stereotype never makes sense because she'd get fired from all the complaints on day one. Sabrina's told that the band just left for a concert tonight. Sabrina casually warps away in front of him since nobody would believe that happened. She sees a poster saying that the concert's sold out, and casts a spell telling the spirits to bring her as close to the band as she can get. Her relying on a third party that can access all knowledge explains why she was able to summon the magazines, as well as why she's surprised that she ended up right next to the amplifiers. Noise from that was loud enough for her to faint for the whole concert and wake up near a nurse 2 hours later. One of the band members looks surprisingly nice because he wishes he got a chance to tell the fans how much they appreciate their support. They know that already, and he should know that. He spots a girl near Sabrina and assumes that she and Sabrina are fans because she's conveniently wearing a shirt that says the band's name on the back of it. That doesn't explain why he assumes Sabrina's a fan too. The band decides to sit at a table with Sabrina and give them autographs. I love that there's a happy ending after all of this, surprisingly. Sabrina says it's better than magic, even though she should know that if she wasn't using magic the whole story, she wouldn't have ended up here at the right time anyways. This story by George Glatter is about Sabrina being a fan of a band and using magic a lot to be close to them. But she's made to suffer every time because she's not allowed in the massage room and gets a bad massage, and she gets warped next to the amplifiers, so she misses the concert. So with a story with as much hardship for her as this, where it's predictable that she'll always fail, it's a relief that has a happy ending, even if it's not likely to happen. It's convenient that the band happens to be in the right place to spot Sabrina, and were idealistic enough to visit some fans in public to be nice instead of just wanting to avoid them because they'd assume they'd all be crazed fangirls who do stuff they don't want. Life with Archie 285. Uncharacteristically, Hilda says at the witches section of a clothing store that she's looking for something trendy in a witch's outfit. They get shown some outfits, and she wants something more conservative. This annoys the saleswoman, who leads her downstairs, and Hilda's actually shocked at being shown nothing but the same black outfit, when she wasn't shocked the last time she was shown nothing but the same black outfit. She must just be making fun of her when she tries to list different shades of black, because they all look the same. Why would she think it'd be worth it to make fun of a witch though? But it's refreshingly realistic that not all witches in the series want to dress like Hilda. And I love that it still makes them look like witches even in the trendy outfits, instead of not taking advantage of them being witches. Archie 390. We see a witch with a red witch outfit that stands out bragging to Sabrina's aunts, annoying them. She did all the breakfast dishes, she's a great bowler, lost 10 pounds, and made a lot of money this year. I guess the only reason witches try to lose weight the mortal way is to brag. It's still stupid when they could just zap away the weight. She must be bragging just to annoy them, because she'd know it only annoys them. She says she only watches public television. I wish she explained why. I don't see why that's something to brag about. She refuses their food because she's vegetarian, and Hilda says she hates it when cousin Darcy shows up to visit, because she's a goody three-shoes, and not because she's a bragger who refuses her meals. Huh? If she's trying to annoy her on purpose, she's clearly not good. I like the pun though where it turns out she has 3 legs. They could have easily not done that. I feel sorry for her though. Won't she have a harder time walking? Won't the 3rd leg get in the way? She also brags that she passed the test without studying. I would think that if the writer's gonna have a character who mentions television now she watches be a goody two-shoes, then she would say that she never watches television because she reads books instead. What's goody two-shoes about only watching public television? She should have said educational TV.